I just didn't know how I could see a future literally without hair, and yet, here I am now. A lot of the time that I was wearing it over the years, a lot of people didn't know it was a wig. Some people picked it up, but a lot of people didn't. As you get older, the density of your hair naturally thins. So when you're in your 20s, you can pull off a wig. But when you're in your 40s, it just doesn't look natural. There's 2 scars at the back. But at the front, the scar's 3D. It's like an indentation. One, you feel, do I tell them the truth and feel embarrassed? Or 2, do you tell a lie and then you feel like a fraud because you're not being honest? I look back and I can see how unnecessary all of that was. All that pain that every guy goes through who's in the same situation. And that's the message I want to put out to other people who are at that position.
It kind of blew me away, quite honestly. It's been a long sort of journey for yourself, right? Started very young. Obviously, you went into quite a lot of detail in your messages, which is brilliant. And I thank you for that. But, I'd love to just hear it from your own sort of perspective. How did this begin for you, this whole journey?
Yeah, sure, Harry. I guess, look, if I'm 53, and you think with hair, it's something you would, you'd be over it by now. Like life just goes on. But where it started originally was I was about probably 15, 16, 17 at high school. I was never great at footy. I was never great at cricket, but I kind of got that acceptance with girls, I suppose, because I always had long curly hair and I really identified pretty strongly with it. And I was trying to rock this kind of long curly hair thing because I kept getting a lot of compliments and girlfriends, etc. And then I remember I always had a high forehead as well.
Yeah.
And I remember about 18, not long after 18, I was literally looking in the mirror one time and I just looked up at my temples and I just noticed they're just receding a little bit. And then it went from that to overnight, I just panicked. All I could see was this 18-year-old who was going to be completely bald. At the time I didn't really know anything about it, but talking back now, all I saw was a Norwood 7 because it's a one-way thing, baldness. It's not something that it's not like acne that it can come and then you can treat it and it goes away. And so all I became was obsessed about everywhere I went with people who were bald, and it literally took on a life of its own. And I just couldn't stop thinking about it and worrying about it. And the funny thing is, and the most stupid thing is, I had so much hair, and I remember I can look back now at photos of myself back at 18 at parties and whatever, and all I see is this young guy with heaps of hair, and yet the irony is all I could see back then was this balding guy.
Yeah.
So given that it was, this is back about 1985, and there wasn't much around, but there were hair transplants, and we didn't have the information age. There was no internet, no forums, no mobile phones, etc. So it was just going through a phone book, and I just started looking up hair transplant surgeons, and literally I went to the first one that I rang, and I went in there, and today I would have been rejected, and I was 18 again, as I say, and if anyone performed a hair transplant on an 18-year-old, I could have sued them. But I was so self-conscious about it, and I was so happy to hear the surgeon say, yeah, we can lower your hairline. And again, bear in mind, I actually had no idea what a hair transplant looked like. I actually had never seen one, so I had no idea there were going to be these little...
Was it like the punch grafts, where they take like a really sizable, punch, out of the... Was it the back or was it the side? Because I've seen different...
out of the
back. Yeah.
Basically like a cookie cutter.
Yeah.
It was like a miniature cookie cutter, and so they would take out holes in the front, and then they would just plug them up with this little punch of maybe 10, 15 hairs. And so after I had it done, I remember the next day I took the bandages off, and it wasn't at the height that I wanted. Right. So I actually even went back and had a second one to lower it. and he agreed to do that. And looking back now, I think he just saw money, this surgeon, because you know, and I told my best friends, and that was it. And I had so much hair, I could actually hide it. I was lucky, except, you know, the wind was my enemy. Whenever I was walking around, I was always walking with my head into the wind.
Right.
Then, look, within a year, I just started to see what the result was and what I'd actually done, and I felt a sense of shame and guilt because I actually chose this, and I was so paranoid that someone would lift my hair. And I remember I was at uni one time, and there was probably about 10 of us, guys and girls, and we're mucking around and fluffing each other's hair. And I was just paranoid someone would touch it. So anyway, I went back to this surgeon and I said, look, can we do something? I'm really unhappy. And luckily, the nurse who assisted him, she took me aside and she said, look, be careful because scars can be really damaging psychologically. And she recommended to me that I go to a plastic surgeon, because this surgeon who did the hair transplanting, he was just going to cut them all out in one big lot and then sew it all together. And so I was really lucky in one sense. She said she got me a referral, and I did see a very good plastic surgeon. And so I had, over the next 4 or 5 years, I guess what they call today an FUT, or a strip section at the back taken out, but instead it was the front. So they removed that in small stages, because if it was done in one big stage, it'd be a huge stretched scar. So we did it maybe once every 6 to 12 months, take out a little piece, sew it up, take out a little piece to try and get that scar as narrow as possible. I had that done, and of course I still had some hair, but of course now I would have been about, let's say, 21, and I was starting to recede more. Then by about 23, it was receding even more, and I remember wearing a bit of makeup to try and hide the scar.
Yeah.
And then around 25, it was getting pretty obvious, and I was just very, very self-conscious. I was worried people would say to me, "What's that scar from?" Because it's quite a surgical scar. It's not like a natural scar, which might be a little bit jagged, and because it was linear right across my forehead here. I wanted more hair, so I went back to another hair transplant surgeon, but a really good one.
Yeah.
And he actually said to me, he said, "Look, if you gave me $1 million right now, I would still have to say no." And then he just said, "Look, unfortunately, you're not a candidate." And he did suggest to me, which I could never have done. He said, "Look, I really recommend you think about wearing a hairpiece."
Yeah.
And at 25 and always having long hair, that's the last thing I could think of doing. And I just balked at the idea. But he said, "Look, I've got a client. He's coming in tomorrow. If you at least have a look." So I actually had a look, and he was a young guy. He was probably early 20s. And you know what? It looked okay. And I thought about it for a week. And I can't remember, Harry, if I told anyone. And then I went and had it done. And it wasn't expensive. It was probably $400. And my hair was brown and curly, and so this lady just permed this hairpiece and coloured it brown, and then she cut it into my hair, and I really liked it. And then I remember, actually, I got a taxi home from the city, and I remember I told the cab driver, I said, "This is a wig," and he wouldn't believe me.
Yeah.
And I was really trying to test him, and I would start testing people in ways,
Right.
and I told all my friends, I thought everyone's going to take the piss, so
you're going to tell them?
Beat them to the punch. And so I told them. So we had a hair party, and
nice.
And once I got it out of the way, I had nothing to hide, and people actually told me, "Gee, you look younger, Adrian, and you look happier." And I actually liked the wig. I mean, ironically,
Yeah.
I felt, and I'd make jokes about it. Like sometimes I wouldn't tape it down, and I'd bend over so it would fall off. Then I'd lift my head up and I'd go, "Who left the window open?" Or, I'd try and make it light and
enjoy it, right? You enjoyed the hair system or the wig, right? Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like with girlfriends I had over those years, I think when they saw that I wasn't perfect and I was happy to show that by, "Look, I wear a wig," they started to come out of themselves and say they felt that their ass was too big. or their breasts were too small, and they weren't. I mean,
Yeah.
it showed me how we all have these insecurities, and especially women. I really found out a lot about women in terms of, or young women at the time, who were gorgeous and really had issues just like us guys do with our hair. And
Yeah, that they don't
and
see it. You know, they like you. They look. You think they look fantastic, and they themselves just don't see it, or they only sort of focus on the what they perceive as flaws, right? Or we wouldn't even pick up on it, but because it's not sort of perfect in their eyes, they see it as a flaw, don't they? Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely, and it just blew me away. So that was a really good insight. Fast forward, probably about 10 years ago, I was just over the hairpiece. I mean, it was looking like a dead animal. I almost didn't care because most people knew I wore it. If it was a really hot day, I'd just wear a cap.
Yeah.
Close friends, I wouldn't wear it. People I've never met, I wouldn't wear it. It was starting getting to the point where, I sort of, this is what it was all about. I thought if I didn't have these scars, I'd just shave my head. And for probably 10, 15 years, I really wanted to shave my head. People like Bruce Willis started to come out rocking the bald look,
Mm.
Vin Diesel, all these other people. Back in my day, it was Jack Nicholson,
Yeah.
And that was it. And that was only because he was an actor in a movie. It wasn't even real. So there was no real role models back then you could identify with in terms of your self-esteem, whereas today it's sort of really fashionable. And to be honest, when I finally shaved my head, and I had SMP, which was 3 years ago, everyone said to me I look 10 years younger.
Yeah.
I've got friends in Thailand. I went back there, and everyone just said, "Gee, you look 10 years younger." And people I'd meet if I was traveling or meeting for the first time, they'd say how old I was. I'd tell them how old I was, and they all said you look 10 years younger. So I'm really aware that I'm okay with the bald look, but it's the scars
The
that
scarring.
still they really haunt me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to get over that psychologically, and I find it really hard. And I'm sure a lot of guys who've had transplants back in my day and even today who've had FUT with these horrible big scars that they try and cover, have the same thing. And so basically SMP was a way out of the hairpiece. It's improved the scars probably 50%.
Good.
But I still have this feeling of self-consciousness about them.
Yeah, it's a very interesting story for me, and a lot of interesting points that you mentioned. Things in the early days I can definitely relate to. And I do get a lot of messages. I do get a lot of messages from guys who are in your sort of position, like you said, who've had a transplant, and they say, I want to shave my head, but I've got these scars. What should I do about it? Now it's difficult for me. I haven't been through that. It's just very difficult for me to say, oh, you should do this, you should do that. And the thing is I think I'd say, aside from the scars, it seems like you're at a much better place now with the hair loss, having gone through all of that stuff, without not having hair, than when you were 18 or 20, in your 20s, right? You're at a much more sort of, it's happened. You're not in that sense of like that fear, oh, my hair's gonna fall out and things like that. Do people pick up on it? Do they mention it, or does that not really happen? The scars, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, a couple of times I've had.
I suppose out of curiosity, surely. It's not like, oh, what? It's got to be out of curiosity.
It is, because it's a linear scar. Like at the back, there's two scars at the back, but at the front, it's not. The SMP just covers it.
Yeah.
The scar's 3D. It's like an indentation. So I might be talking to someone as quite close, like at a party after a couple of beers, and we're having a really serious conversation or whatever, and after about 30 minutes they look up and they go, oh, what happened to you? And it's that feeling of one, you feel, do I tell them the truth and feel embarrassed because you feel that you're being faked by wanting to have a hair transplant, Or two, do you tell a lie and then you feel like a fraud because you're not being honest? I mean, I easily say, and this is what I've used, I had a car accident.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and the surgery ended up having to result looking like this.
Yeah.
And you sort of hate yourself because you think, you know, you're lying. And this could be someone who's very close to you or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I'm not 100% at peace. That's
No.
the thing. I'm a long way.
Do you tell people that you've had SMP done? If anyone ever asks, or your close friends, people like that, do you tell them that you've had SMP done, or?
Yeah, I do. My close friends I told.
Yeah.
And others I haven't told, and I don't know if they've picked it up. I think they just
No.
think. And the thing is with the hairpiece, like for a lot of the time that I was wearing it over the years, a lot of people didn't know it was a wig. Some people picked it up, but a lot of people didn't. As you get older, it's really hard to rock a wig because as you get older, the density of your hair naturally thins. So when you're in your 20s, you can pull off a wig, but when you're in your 40s, it just doesn't look natural. But some people I told them I didn't know, and it's the same with the SMP. Some people, they're not looking for it because unless you tell them what to look for, they're not thinking about it.
No.
And we're all thinking about ourselves than the other person we're looking at in life.
Yeah. The only reason why I asked is because obviously with the wig situation, it seems like when that sort of, it was out there, you know, when you told people, hey, this is a wig, which I imagine in the early stages took a lot of balls to do, you know, given that you said, you know, you didn't really want to wear it at first. It seems like that brought you a lot of, you know, you were a lot more comfortable with wearing it and things like that, and out there with it, and you actually enjoyed it because you weren't hiding anything, you know, it was out there. If people noticed, they noticed, or if you wanted to tell them, you told them. And it seems like that gave you quite a lot of comfort in that. Obviously, it's going to be different with scars, but I would just guess that it's going to be more difficult to say to someone, yeah, you know, like if anyone asks, yeah, you know what, when I was younger, like a lot of guys out there, my hair started falling out and I got a hair transplant from not a very good surgeon. And unfortunately, it's left me with this scar. I would hazard a guess because it was, you know, that's how I would react. And I think how most people, decent people on this earth would react. You know, they would just say, oh, you know, it's an interesting story, but not one that I would think any less of you, because people know, you know, people can understand that whole, like you said, everyone has their insecurities, right? And everyone deals with them in different ways. You know, quite honestly, it's just a part of your journey with it, you know, with getting to this point now where you are a lot more comfortable with it, you know, and you're not in that early stages, like I mentioned before, where it's, you know, you'd be so fearful of someone noticing that you have any kind of hair loss going on, you know, it's falling out, or you're doing something to try and cover it up. I think there's absolutely no shame in that. You know, everyone's journey with it is different. As long as you can get to a point at any point down the road where you are feeling comfortable in yourself, you know, that is the goal. And everyone's journey, it just takes different forms, you know, whether people are taking the drugs to hold on to it, or they're doing the hair system or whatever. As long as you get to that comfortable point where you're happy with it, you know, I think that is fantastic. And people really, I wouldn't say they envy it, but they respect it. You know, if someone has dealt with an insecurity, people show, you know, they genuinely respect it, because like you said, again, they have insecurities themselves that they're probably struggling to deal with, or they haven't dealt with, you know, and they say like, wow, you know, it's having been in that place where it was such a big insecurity for you to now be able to stand in front of me and openly talk to me about it is a brilliant thing, is a fantastic thing, and not something that a lot of people can do. It's very difficult. But I would think that if that's what you did, you know, if someone did pick up on it, or it was and I'm not saying, oh, you need to go and, you know, tell everyone, hey guys, you know, I'll get online and this is, you know, I've had this scar, this is what it's from. You could do that, but I think if it ever comes up and you did manage to just tell someone, I think I would guess that it would make you feel better, because it's out there. There's nothing to hide, you know. It could be this thing like, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm assuming that there's maybe certain situations where you are thinking, oh, is someone going to notice? Is someone going to ask me? I don't know, at a social event or something. But if it's out there already, or you know in yourself, oh, if someone does ask me, I'll just tell them what it is, then I think that it would reduce that sort of anxiety around it, because that's certainly what happens with guys when they kind of shave their head. And again, I don't want to make a straight comparison between the two, but when you tell someone, I shaved my head because my hair was falling out and it made me feel like crap, the response is always fantastic. Fair play, good for you. Like, it's good that you've done something like that to make yourself feel better and get through that. Whereas if, and I've had people do it, and I considered doing it at the start, if you might shave it off and say, oh, I'm just trying a new look, or, oh, I'm just, it's just a phase, or I had to do it because we were in lockdown and I couldn't get to the barbers, then you're sort of worrying, oh, are they going to find out that that's not really what it is? Or, like you said, you feel like a bit of a fraud, bit of a phony. And it goes with all things, even like the wig. I'm sure that when you were rocking the wig and the hair system, if you'd have been hiding that, and not told anyone what it was, you'd probably be living in fear every day of someone finding out that it's a wig. And that's no way to go. It's definitely no way to live like that.
And
you would have built it up.
You're right. You've got to have, I think for a hairpiece, you have to have the personality for it. I mean, if you're wearing a hairpiece in the hope of hiding the fact that you're bald, well, I think you should forget about it straight away. You've got to have the ability to be self-deprecating and
own it, really own it, right?
Own it and have a joke at it. Have a joke about it. If you don't have a sense of humour, you're going to struggle wearing a hairpiece. And like I said, I actually enjoyed it. I didn't hide it. And the reason too, I think also, Harry, is it wasn't because it was hiding my baldness, but it was the scar. I got a great sense of security because I didn't have to talk about the scar because you couldn't see it.
Yeah.
And I guess that was the hardest thing about making the decision. And like I said earlier, for years I wanted to shave my head, but I was so paranoid about the scars. And SMP just seemed like a viable option.
Yeah.
And look, I feel great because it's improved the look of the scars a lot, but you can still see them.
Yeah.
And I find myself wearing caps sometimes at work, and then I'll take it off for sort of half the shift and put it back on, in the hope that people will think, oh, well, there can't be anything wrong with his head because he's not wearing the cap all the time.
Right.
But it's still
there, right? It's still a worry in the back of your mind and things like that. Yeah. No, I mean, again, it's difficult for me to say, oh, hey, Adrian, you should, just take the hat off, get out there and tell everyone about it, because I'm not in that position. It's easy for me to say. It's another thing to actually go and do it. But I think you could, although very difficult to do that and put that out there, I think that there would be maybe some more comfort in that, if people did know or whatever, you're not waiting around for someone to kind of find out that, or ask you about it. It kind of goes back to what you said at the start when you were very young, right? And I can really relate to this. When my hair started going at the back, no one really picked up on it. No one. Only one person ever said anything, and that was, about almost a year after, 9 months or something after I'd first kind of discovered that it was going at the back, right? But I lived in fear. One of my biggest fears was someone's going to notice. Someone's going to notice that I'm losing my hair, and they're going to, laugh at me, or they're going to come and ask me about it in front of other people and like, shame me almost, or really embarrass me, in front of other people, to kind of point out, oh, hey, you're losing your hair, and I was so afraid that someone was going to do that. But it was, in my head, like you mentioned, exactly the same. I had this image of me, 10, 20 years down the line, like you said, Norwood 7, just with the horseshoe, completely bald. And it scared the shit out of me. I was always thinking, oh no, am I going to look like I'm going to look terrible? It's going to look awful. But the reality was no one noticed, no one was picking up on it, because they were too busy. When I walked down the street and someone was coming towards me, that, I'm thinking, oh, are they going to see that I'm losing my hair? meanwhile, they're probably thinking, oh, are they going to see like my skin's not looking good today? Or, oh, I
Yeah.
haven't worn anything nice. Or, oh, do they think I look poor? Or it could be anything, like you said, oh, my arse is too big. I'm too fat. I'm too skinny. It could just be anything. But people are always walking around just, thinking about things like that. When in reality, everyone's just worrying about their own things,
Yeah.
And it's different levels, of course there's different levels to it. You think about people with real sort of conditions or disfigurements, and one of the things for me, again, quite different, but when I was out living in China, everyone would stare at me all the time because I wasn't Chinese, I was foreign, and it does wear on you, it's a constant thing that really wears you down over time. But again, even then, most decent human beings recognize that there is, all these people that are out there, there's not this one sort of perfect image of a person. And that combined with them worrying about their own thing, people generally just aren't asked about how other people are looking or things like that. It's sort of just, it is what it is. But it's very difficult. We've really get in our own heads about it,
Yeah.
especially things like hair loss. And now for you, it's obviously not, don't want to say transferred, but you obviously still got the scarring that kind of is there. And that's obviously not something like hair where you can just shave it off and it's gone, right? Is there, obviously the SMP has helped, which is fantastic, and
Yeah.
you sat here in front of me, you look fantastic. You definitely don't look 53 like you said, and it's a great look, because of course I'm a fan of the look, because the shaved head, which is what the look you've got, it's just a stylish, clean, easy to maintain look. And like you said, luckily now there are tons and tons and tons of men who are rocking the sort of shaved head now. It much less so seen as you're a thug or you're some sort of bad man walking the streets. It's very sort of accepted these days, which is brilliant. Is there other than the SMP, are there other things that have helped you kind of deal with the scarring, or is it still really just the main sort of issue? Is because there will be, like I said, there are the guys out there in the same situation. Are there any other things that have kind of worked for you or do help at times with, kind of just forget about it or not worry about it so much?
Well, I try. Look, when I had shaved my head and had the SMP, it was a relief getting rid of the hair, not just the wig, but just the whole hair thing. Like, I mean, I was starting to go a little grey, so I'd get that touched up it just became a whole maintenance thing. And I've heard you say it in your vlogs on YouTube too. It's once it's off, it's just something you don't have to worry about. So it was very liberating once I shaved my head.
Brilliant.
Not just aesthetically, but I get up in the morning, I'll buzz it, and I'm good for the day.
Yeah.
But I sort of thought, okay, well, keep positive with that. So I started going back to the gym and exercising and thinking of I'm not my head, I'm not my scalp. I'm not really my whole body in truth, but there's a lot more to a person than just one small thing. And I wish I could apply this to my thinking with the scar, but I exercise a lot. It sort of distracts me a little bit. But it's kind of, and the other thing too, look, it's about 3 years since I've had the SMP, and it's lightened a little bit, and I'm probably due. But I really want to try and ride this out a little bit and just get more used to it's okay to have a scar.
Yeah.
But it's very hard I know that up here, but it's very hard to experience that knowledge in here.
Yeah, to live it. Sense. Yeah, easy to say. Yeah.
To own it, exactly. Yeah. And sometimes I'll look at other people, or I'll be with someone who might have a disfigurement or something. I mean, I work in disability. I've worked in disability for 28 years, and I've worked with people with, some horrific injuries and burns and whatnot. And I feel kind of guilty for feeling this way, or, I've lost a couple of friends to cancer and whatnot. And I sort of think, geez, my problems are nothing. My problems are nothing. And I know that, but I really wish I could just experience that as who I am 24/7.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sort of exposing it in terms of just don't wear a cap. It helps in certain situations, but in others where there might be a bit of stress anyway, it doesn't help. So
it's still a journey for you, right? It's still something you're working on. Yeah. Which is okay. Also, it's, that's okay, because this whole thing is a journey. Think about, one of the things I think it's important to recognize is think about where you're at now compared to 20 years ago, and it's huge, that's huge difference. And so this is something we like continuously working on, and I think that's important to remember. You've obviously come a long way with this to be a young guy, doing, hair surgeries and things at that age. Again, that the surgeon and things like that, should have not let you go through with it. But you did, you went through with that, obviously, and it's really telling to see where you've come from, to this point. And obviously you dealt with that. And so I think it's important to be optimistic about it as well, and see that there should be a day where you've got the scar and you've had the journey up to this point, but you can work through that as well,
Yeah.
You gotta give yourself more credit, in terms of that. I think, again, it's just people, all including myself, everyone. It's so easy just to focus on, again, what we don't have, or the negatives, right? Without looking at all the positive things that we've done, or we've been through, or we've achieved. But sometimes it is important to do that, and to look back and say, you know what, like, I should give myself some credit and a pat on the back, because I've come a damn long way with this.
Human nature dictates we always want what we haven't got, and once we've got it, then we want something else. And I mean, I know that if this scar could magically disappear, I'd just be worrying about the next thing, and then the next thing, and I even, maybe because of this lockdown, my thinking's been going into overdrive a bit, and I've even thought about going out of the pan into the fire and having a hair transplant to cover the scar. And then it's sort of like the Sorcerer's Apprentice, where the broomstick breaks in two and everything's flooded, and you're continually trying to mop up a mess that you keep creating, and the more you try and fix it, the more you make it worse. Or like a painting, the more you try and fix it, the worse it gets. And I know that's not a good move, because it's just a backward step. That's not going forward. That's going backwards.
Yeah.
And I'm going back into the hair, thinking if I had it, it'd be, is there enough density in the hair transplant? Is there this or that? And it's just jumping out of the pan into the fire. And I've come to realise that. And there will always be some issue, I know, and I've just got to somehow accept it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for you, it's. And again, I appreciate that it's easy for me to say, but if if we were mates having a beer right now, I would say that looking forward, to be able to accept it and really own that, like you did the wig and everything else, is 100% the way forward, because you don't need to change anything about yourself. You've already got that in you. You've already got it there. You don't need to add anything in or pay for something else to be done to then have another thing that you need to kind of worry about. Just being able to accept you as you are, how you sit there now in front of me, is absolutely, I think, the way forward for yourself. Because if you can get to a point with the scar where you're not, when I look at you now, and if I saw you, I mean, if we spent ages together, I might eventually ask you, but again, I'd be more concerned about, like you said, who you are, what do you do, how are you treating people? Those are the things that genuine people are interested in, and I would also argue that if someone does ask you about the scar, like I said, just out of curiosity, like, oh, that's, I noticed you got a scar there, like, what kind of happened? And I don't, people, if you were to just think how powerful it would be, I think, for you to be able to say, yeah, you know what, again, when I was young, I had this, I had a hair transplant, I had a bit of hair loss and things, and I got this scar from it. But, you know, now I just go with the SMP and I think it looks all right. You know, what do you think? You know, and for them to be able to say like, oh, all right, I didn't realize. And they say, you know, it looks good. Yeah, fair play. It would be a great feeling, I think, you know, and just like, wow, like why that was interesting, you know, and then the next person, you do the same and it kind of builds like that until eventually you kind of know how people are going to react, or everyone kind of knows that in your life, so they're not going to be asking anymore. And that sort of fear or the worry about it, I would hope would kind of slowly sort of subside, you know. So like you said,
Yeah,
the acceptance of it and really owning it and having it out there, and to an extent, man, being proud of it because you did it, but you've learned a lot from the experience. I'm 100%. I don't doubt that. I don't even need to ask you if you learned from it because you know, of course you have. Um, and with the going from the transplant up to the wig, you know, that must have been a big step as well. The transplant was obviously to cover any sort of signs of hair loss, right?
that's right.
And then the wig, like you said, was to kind of cover up the scar, but you were telling people about that. You know, to go from not even wanting anyone to know that you've got hair falling out to be able to tell people that you're rocking a wig is huge, you know, is massive.
Yeah, yeah,
I wouldn't have been able to do that, Adrian, 100%. That's why I didn't go down those roads, because I knew I would have felt a sense of, I probably would have been embarrassed. I was embarrassed about someone pointing out that my hair was falling out. For me to be able to then rock a wig confidently, I wouldn't have been able to do it, you know, but you did. And same with the SMP, you know, SMP looks like you've had a brilliant job done. So people aren't asking, you know, which is fantastic. But like you said, if someone would ask, you would tell them, you know, and you have told other
yeah,
friends, and you can tell them about those things, you know. In other people's minds, the scar is on this. It's just another thing like that. It's just another thing. It doesn't mean anything to them, you know. Of course, it means a lot to you, but to them, it's just another thing like that. Oh, Adrian, he's got the wig on, or he's had the SMP done. Oh, that scar's from the transplant ages ago or whatever. You know, it's just, to them, it's neither here nor there. They're just inquisitive, and they're not, you know, they're not going to go away really thinking about it like, oh, why did he do that? You know, the only time someone's going to
yeah,
do that is if if they've had the exact same experience as you, or they're in the same position, or they're thinking about having a transplant or something. Other than that, most 99% of people, after you've told them, will forget about it in 5 minutes, you know, or 1 minute
yeah.
really. And I
Yeah,
think
and they'll habituate to it. I mean, yeah, they're not going to ring me back at 3 a.m. saying, "Look, I just want to talk about that scar again." I
no,
mean, that's not going to
no,
happen. I know that,
no, yeah,
um, and you know, you're right. I should think about it, and I haven't thought about it the way you're putting it across. In that, I should be thinking about it as, instead of it like feeling like the mark of Cain, it's this sort of sin of being stupid and getting a hair transplant at 18. I should see it as like a badge of honor in
yeah,
terms of I've overcome all that shit,
exactly,
and I've
exactly.
overcome the wig, and I like the shape, and I like shaving my head. I actually enjoy it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know,
And you're here.
and
Think about what you're doing now as well. I'm a complete, you know, you've seen my videos online, but I'm a complete stranger. And you've gone into detail about of course, I understand because I've had a similar experience, but you've gone into detail with me about that whole experience. And that takes balls, you know, it takes balls to be able to tell me about that stuff. And I hope that this is kind of like a first step for that, maybe, you know, because again, you know, guys and stuff talking about hair loss is a big thing for me because we just don't want to do it. It's embarrassing for us to do, you know, but you've done it here and you've done it in the past. And I really think that, you know, you'd be able to do it with the scar as well. And you're 100% right, man. It's been a big journey for yourself, and absolutely nothing to be ashamed of at all, you know, at all. And because you've dealt with it, you know, all the hair loss side, the transplant stuff, you've been through it, you've lived it, and you've dealt with that part of it. You're left with this new kind of problem, you know, with the scar and whatnot. But you dealt with those things. You can you know, you can own this as well. You can own this as well.
I've been at a mall before, and I've seen a guy who shaved his head, and I can see the punch graft scars on the back of his head. This is a couple of years. No, this is probably 10 years ago. No SMP, no nothing. And this guy's perfectly okay walking it. Well, maybe he's not, but he's still making the choice to
Yeah.
go out and with his head shaved. And I'm thinking, well, if he can do it, why can't I?
Yeah.
And I do, because I've been through it. I remember at the time looking at this guy, feeling, geez, man, I really dip my lid to you, because I think that takes balls. And for him, maybe it's a nothing for him. You know, we all have at different levels. And I look back at when I was 18, 19, 20, and I had this complete sense of, I'm just not only going bald, I actually felt like I was bald. And yet I look back at those photos now, and all I see is this young dude with lots of hippie hair.
Ton of
I
hair.
don't see
Yeah.
any. And I guess if I can try and apply that to now, I'm thinking of these scars. Whereas if I could look at myself externally and think, yeah, but what about everything else? And they're only real to me because it's me.
Yeah.
If you or someone else had the scars, I wouldn't be thinking about it, because I'd have to find them. And if I saw them, I'd be thinking, well, it's a scar. That's it. And I'm not my hair. I'm not my body. That's not who I am.
No.
You know, it's what's inside that, and what's up here, that your values, and they're the things you're really about. And I think what gets respect.
Yeah. And I think you made a really important point there about the guy that you saw in the mall, right? Because guys who have been through the same thing, you know, they know about that kind of world, and they see someone like that, you know, like you said, rocking the shaved head, or you know, even when they got the S&P or whatever, if it's all out there, that other guys will think the exact same that you think. You think, damn, like, fair play for being able to just walk around with that on show. You know, that takes balls, like you said. And that's one side. All the other people who don't really know anything about that world, they don't know why it is, probably, one, don't even notice it, or two, they just think it, like you said, it's just a scar. Oh, that guy's got a scar or whatever, you know. And that's it. And I think, so it's got to be the same for yourself. If someone else has had their hair transplant, because there will be other guys that are in literally the exact same situation, you know. I've had messages from that, and they saw Adrian walking around out there in public now, as you are now. They think, you know what, fair play to that guy, you know, because, maybe they're thinking, I'm doing it, and I know it takes a lot of balls to do it and have it all out there. Or maybe they're not doing it, and they're still in that sort of cover up phase, or they're feeling ashamed about it. And that, you know, they'd be thinking, damn, like, how is that guy just going about his day, not kind of worrying about it, just owning it? Because that's the reality, you know, that is the reality. And it's important, I think, to kind of recognize it like that. It's difficult, but sometimes, like you say, you got to take a step out of your own body almost, and look from the outside in. You know, if I was another person looking at me, what would I be thinking? You know, and the reality is probably not a lot. You just think, oh, that's another guy, you know, he got a scar, whatever. Or, you know, they're not thinking like, why has he done it? You know, is that a hair transplant? Like, I can't, when did he have that when he was really young? You know, that they're not going into those details that you know about. But that's just not a thing for other people, you know. They're like, oh, why did he get that done? What did he do after that? You know, it's just not how people think.
And I think you've just hit it on the head, because I think for me, that scar has a whole story to it for me. But for someone out of the public, it's just a scar.
Yeah.
And they'll come to whatever conclusion that they believe that caused it, or they may just be completely indifferent to it. But I guess for me, it has a whole story behind it, and I think it's something that I feel so self-conscious about because of what it represents.
Yeah.
Not so much what it is.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a scar. Everyone's got a little scar somewhere in the body. And it's funny, sometimes if I've spoken to someone close about scars, or someone I don't know, and they say, oh, and everyone wants to, it's like you get a tattoo, and suddenly everyone wants to show you, oh, well, yeah, I'll show you my tattoo. And everyone wants to show me their scars. And it's incredible. You know, we all have these insecurities, getting back to what we said before. And, you know, I know it's only real in my mind, you know. It's because of what the story of it is that really affects me. But to someone else, it's neither here nor there. And I understand that.
And going back to a point I made earlier, I really think that you would get a sense of, you know, genuine sort of like a sense of empowerment from being able to tell someone the truth about that, you know.
Yeah.
to really have the guts to open up and be vulnerable enough to be able to say, you know, again, it's going to be rare, but if I don't know, you're at some sort of gathering or a colleague or something, and you've got a bit of time, and they genuinely ask you, you know what, Adrian, I noticed you got that scar, like where did that sort of come from? Just think how, you know, for you to be able to sit there and say like, yeah, like when I was young, like my hair was going, and it was really a real struggle for me, you know. It was to be able to talk like that, you know, about an insecurity takes so much like confidence and balls. Other people are honestly just blown away by that, and it's nothing but respect. You know, it's genuinely is nothing but respect for people that can do that. You know, you've probably been in a situation yourself with someone else talking about their insecurity. You know, or you know, think about people who have had like crazy weight loss or something like that, and you think, and they show you a picture, and you think, wow, like I can't, you know, that's incredible. You know, now they're probably worried about loose skin, or they're thinking, you know, oh, they don't look perfect. But all you're thinking of is wow, like for you to be able to have overcome that and conquered that and be where you are now, and be able to tell me all about it is fantastic, you know. And that's all you're thinking. That's all you're going to be thinking. And it's going to be the same when you know, when you talk to someone about what you've been through and how you can be here now, being able to openly talk about it, you know, go to that place of vulnerability and have the confidence to do that. People are going to be like, you know, honestly be blown away by that. Think, wow, like, you know, fair play. Like you've obviously come a real long way with it, and good for you, you know, bloody good for you. And I think that you honestly can grow from that, you know, genuinely grow from that, and feel you've got to feel empowered by it, you know, and really give yourself credit for that. If you can, you know,
Yeah.
when you get to that space, 100%, man.
Yeah, no, cheers. And I think it's also cathartic, like to be able to talk about the
Oh
very
yeah,
things that we're, you know, our Achilles heel, or the things that really we feel really ashamed of or whatever. It's a really cathartic thing. And I know that in other areas of my life, when I have shared something, it's cathartic, and it can be kind of rewarding too. Like if I'm on a forum on hair loss or something, I've always said, you know, it's a lot cheaper and a lot easier to learn by my mistakes than your own. Like, don't get a hair transplant.
yeah,
Whatever it might be, I just always say to people, look, yeah, I just say learn by my mistakes, because it's a lot. It's going to save you a lot of grief, and by saying that and feeling that genuinely, I really feel like it wasn't for nothing then. Like
yeah,
what I went through wasn't a waste. It actually, if it can help someone else, then it was almost worth doing, because someone can benefit from it. If that can save someone from going through the same thing, then it wasn't all in vain. You know?
definitely, yeah, definitely. Um, so is that you obviously that, you know, that's some advice that you give out. Have you had guys, you know, you obviously had people ask you about how to sort of deal with hair loss and stuff, given, you know, your own sort of journey with it. Um, what things have sort of helped you over the years, and to deal with the hair loss specifically, you know, when you're losing hair, things like that. You've had your own journey with it, but you know, and I don't want to say, oh, if you could go back, like what would you change? But I suppose, you know, from your experience, what sort of advice do you give to guys?
Um, I guess you know what I say, or the advice I give is, you know, be careful what you wish for. And what I said before, it's true. You know, human nature kind of dictates we always want what we haven't got. Otherwise, the first paycheck would have been done and dusted, and we wouldn't have wanted another cent. I mean, it's not true.
Mm,
It'll always feel like it's never enough. And it's the same with hair transplants. I mean, if you start that journey, well, it will never be enough. It'll either be the won't have the density or the coverage, or you'll be your own worst critic, which is my whole situation right now. But
you can think about it, and so, you know, but I think that's a great point you just made there, you know, and that is my concern with it. When you go down the road of trying to kind of battle nature, you know, and try and stop what is natural, you know, the hair's going, it happens to millions and millions and millions of men, and to try and combat that and get back to in your mind kind of hope to get back to where your hair was before it started falling out. Really unrealistic idea of what these sort of treatments can do for your hair. It's going to be almost impossible, I would say, very, very difficult to feel a complete level of satisfaction with it. There will always be, oh, could this have been, thicker, or like you said, or could this hairline look more natural? And even more so today, there's a guy on, you spoke to Joe Tillman, right?
Yeah.
And he is big on this. He's big. Most people look at his hair transplant and they think, oh, it doesn't even look like you've had one.
Yeah.
And he says,
Yeah.
but this is what hair would naturally look like for a guy of my age, and so that's why it looks how it does. And you've got people getting cheap jobs in various countries and things like that, and not being satisfied with the results because they have this sort of unrealistic representation. And unfortunately, not every hair transplant doctor, even today, is going to say, oh, no, sorry, I can't get, you're obviously describing a perfect hairline or whatever. That's not realistic. So I'm not going to take your money, see you later. They're gonna just go for it a lot of places, and they're gonna get it done, and unfortunately come away disappointed. Now, I suppose if you're gonna go down that road, you got to really kind of try and think with your head and not with your heart, right? In a sense of what's going to come after this hair transplant, not how they kind of advertise these things where, oh, this, I can get this done and that's it, I'm done. Because that's the unfortunate thing about hair transplants as well, is most people think naively it's sort of one and done. You get your hair transplant and that's it, you're sort of saved. And it's absolutely, that's just not the case at all.
That's right.
And I just think for someone who wants to go down that route or is thinking about it, you've got to really think long and hard, and be realistic about what you can achieve, because you can't change the fact that you are losing your hair, and you are going bald. That's just in your genetics. That is something you cannot change. You can do a few things to try and hold on to it, or mitigate it, slow it down, things like that. But there's absolutely nothing out there that's going to get you back to that perfect hair, when you were 13, 14, 15. It just doesn't exist. And I think you've got to really think about it carefully.
I look back at when I was 18, 19, 20, 21, etc. And I just didn't know how I could see a future literally without hair. And yet, here I am now and my head's shaved. And I'm not even thinking about the hair. It's the scar. So in one way, I have transcended that whole part about the hair problem because I'm not thinking about it now. So I've got to keep reminding myself, okay, so if your problem is your scars now, then if you transcended the hair problem, then it stands to reason that I'm sure there'll be a point where you'll transcend the scar problem.
Yeah.
Because you've proven it, Adrian, to yourself, looking back in the past.
Absolutely.
I couldn't see a way of not wearing a hairpiece, whereas I've proved that I could find a way of being very comfortable not wearing it. And I've got to try and apply it to the scar now that, well, if you've been able to achieve that, you can achieve that with this goal too. And like you said before, it's a journey.
Yeah.
And I look at these young guys today, and I can just, at my age at 53, I see these kids at 21, 22, and it's exactly the same feeling I had. And I just wish I could grab hold of them. And, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but just make them aware that it's just smokes and mirrors. And it's the best example would be, it's like trying to get out of a hole with a shovel. The more you dig into this problem, the deeper you're going to be entrenched in it.
Yeah.
And like what you did, you actually could foresee the whole thing, and you just got rid of the problem before you even wasted your time trying to deal with it.
Yeah.
And that for you, and at your age when you did that too, Harry, that's very rare, and that shows character. And I know that's what you are instilling in other people with what you're doing, and I see it and I hear it, and it empowers me even now with my scars, because you've given me another way of looking at it. And yeah, in some ways, because you're a stranger, it's easy for me to say that and feel that. And then I've got to go back to my normal world tomorrow, back to work and whatnot. And will I still feel that way or not? But I've just got to put it out there, I guess, because by listening to you, and even just by the process of me sharing it, it kind of validates the experience of it.
Yeah.
But it's just a scar. It's nothing more.
Yeah, I think when you can speak about it like you've done here, get it out into the real world, bring it into reality, you then realize it is actually something that you can deal with. The same applies to the hair. When it's something that is just kind of in our head, we're worrying about, we're making up all these sort of scenarios in our head of people kind of pointing it out or asking about it and discovering it or talking about it behind your back. We play all these scenarios around in our head. We start to cover it up. We're afraid someone's going to notice. When you kind of just talk about it like we've done, or like you're doing now, bring it into reality, you realize, well, it's just another thing, like you said, like the hair system, or like being overweight, or the hair falling out, that I can actually deal with. It's not just I can deal with it. And I think for you going forward, and I would just say, just try your best, to just really dig deep and just get it out there, just air the laundry in a sense, because I think once it's out there, and you see how people kind of react to it, like I said, when they're saying like, oh, just fair play, because the other side of it, which I don't, it's natural to do so. When you said before, where you kind of said, oh, I had an accident, or it's something like that, that hasn't worked. I'm sure that going down that route hasn't really made you feel any better about it. And so the next thing, so I think you just got to try it, just try it, just get it out there and really just sort of own it. However you can do that safely. Whether it's start with close friends, I think you said already know about it, right? But as soon as you can start putting it out there yourself, and really that is genuinely owning it, you see how people are going to react. I think slowly those fears are gonna die down. It's just like the tick box, the check box I talk about when you first shave it off. How's your family going to react? How are your colleagues going to react? And when they all say it looks great, good for you, it's another thing ticked off the box. Well, that scenario that you've been playing around in your mind, worrying about, you realize isn't true, isn't going to happen, and that you tick them off until there's none of them left. And you realize, well, actually, there wasn't really a lot to worry about, and you think about it less, you move on with it, you replace that sort of worry with hopefully something more sort of positive and dedicate yourself to. And I think that's just the way forward with a lot of problem insecurities like this, like the scar, like the hair, like being overweight, anything like that. I think it can apply to all of them. And so going forward, I think that's definitely, and I know you know that. I think having had that conversation, you have done that. You've kind of brought that into the real world, and you've almost realized it for yourself, I think, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of what I say, even just you kind of talking about it, I think has kind of brought that into your own mind of this is probably how I should go forward with it.
Yeah, sometimes you need to bounce it off. Look, I respect you because of what you represent and your values and how you're able to do it at such a young age, when you first shaved your head, etc. So I sort of think, well, if this guy can do it, what's my excuse? And it's sort of like challenging yourself a little bit, and you've got to. And like we've been saying, I mean, whether it's the gorgeous girl who believes her bum's too big, or the gorgeous girl who thinks her nose is too big, or whatever. Everyone has something, and you're right. I think it just takes it's not confidence, but it's character. And that was something I watched the interview you had with Joe.
Yeah.
And he made that point too, that it's character building, to be able to buzz your hair and not stick to the mainstream media of Instagram telling you how you should look and what you should drink and what you should wear, etc. And to be an individual, I mean, that's really being an individual.
Yeah. And
when everyone tries to be an individual by being beautiful and by wearing this top or whatever, well, everyone's just the same and they're conforming, and that's easy. It's easy to slip into that because all you do is you just hand your money over. Whereas you're saying, no, this is who I am, and I'm owning it.
Yeah.
And everyone's perfectly welcome to have their opinion, but it's just their opinion. Doesn't make it real. Doesn't make it true.
And I think,
and that's something I've got to do.
Yeah, and the character building thing and the growing, in a sense, is a really important point, because when you have this experience and you kind of learn, you really own it, it's yours, and you go through that experience, it is genuine growth, it is character building like you described. It takes balls to do it, and you learn from it, and that's a good thing. And like you said, you're now in a position, having all the experience that you've had with the kind of hair, the different things you've tried, you're now in an experience to be able to help other people through that as well, whether it's advice on the forums or just having this conversation now, anything like that. And that's a good thing, that's a good thing to be able to do and to have. And it's got to come, there's got to be loads of different areas of your life as well, with your work and things like that. Other tough experiences that you've had, that you've done a similar thing in, you've kind of overcome it. And now, whether it's giving advice to people or just you've changed things in your own life because of it for the better, those are all good things. And I think this is just another step for you, another step in that sort of journey. Yeah.
And one thing too, like, I guess the gift, if there's anything in it really, that the gift of getting older is wisdom. And 53, I look back and I can see that young guy, but that adolescent that was me. And I understand why I felt that way at the time. But now, I look back and I can see how unnecessary all of that was. All that pain that every guy goes through who's in the same situation. And that's the message I want to put out to other people who are at that position or at that point, that it is so unnecessary. And it's so easy for me to say because it's just words. But when you've lived it, and like yourself, where you've experienced it, you're just putting yourself through hell for nothing. And sadly, you don't realise it till after the event. But you don't have to, because you can learn from, like I've said before, learn by my mistakes, because it'll cost you nothing. You'll look far, far better, and you won't have a scar to worry about. So for me, it helps me deal with mine, because I realise it hasn't been for nothing. And if that can help someone else, well, then all the better.
Brilliant.
Because it's coming from my own truth. It's coming from my own life experience. It's not something out of a book I've read. No. And it's an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing journey, like you said. And the grass will always be greener. And I know that if the scars weren't there, it'll be something else about myself I'll be worrying about that isn't. I'm too old, or I'm too this, or I'm too that. There's lots of cop-outs. And I've just got to put it into practice with the scars. Just like I did with the wig, just like I did with the hair plugs, just like I did with,
Yeah. I think, no, really well said, really well said for the people. Even I can relate 100%, we really beat ourselves up about it. And then later on down the line, when you look back, you think, wow, like, why was I so worried, or what was I worrying about? It's a part of life, I think it's a part of growing. But as you said, if someone who's back there in that position can kind of really listen to what you're saying and your sort of experience, and really sort of think, oh, you know what, maybe he is right. Maybe I am sort of really worried about this too much, or I need to kind of, I've got loads of time left with this hair, or whatever the insecurity is, then I think it's absolutely a great thing if, to help people learn from that. So I've really enjoyed this chat. I really enjoy this part of doing all this stuff. It's a pleasure to meet you and hear your story. You've come a long way with it, man, and it's absolute my respect for it.
I guess the answer really lies in not trying to overcome it, but by transcending it. And by transcending it, I mean it's like letting go of it.
Yeah.
Stop trying to do battle with it, because it's just like, you're holding a tiger by the tail otherwise, and your life will just be consumed by it. You've just got to somehow transcend it. Where, okay, yeah, it's there, but shows a lot of other things too, and you don't think about them. So just move on if you can. And life's so short, and all those little things.
Yeah.
Looking back, I guess they have helped,
Good.
as has the conversation too. I think of how real that felt when I was 18, 19. That was everything. I felt that was just the, that was the key that will unlock all my problems. And all that key did was open a door, and it was like opening a Pandora's box of pain for the next, 20, 30 years that could have been avoided. But if you can do what you're saying and what you represent, and have the guts to go against the flow and be really who you are rather than trying to change who you are, then that's a huge statement you're making to people. And people they may not agree with you, but they will respect you for it. And you can then apply that to everything else in your life. And that's what will get you through life.
And just on a personal level, you yourself can absolutely apply that to the scar situation.
Well,
what you just said then is exactly it. Exactly it. With the respect and things like that, that's how people are going to see it. So I wish you all the best, man. Thank you once again. You. It's been really nice talking to you again. Great to meet you.
You too, Harry.
I swear I like your style. Put you in Chanel cause it's just perfect for your smile. Girl, I swear for you I run the world, I'd run the miles. The way you look at me, I think I'm going insane. It's crazy how we started out to what the love